Hello everyone. In this video we're going to be taking a look at an article from Tech World written by Lori Clark, published on May 9th. Could blockchain spell the end of Facebook? Blockchain is disrupting a number of industries. Is social media next? Well, honestly, I think blockchain has a possibility of doing a lot more than taking out social media and disrupting the banks and things like that, because it's a basis for a completely decentralized internet, for example. I mean, it has a lot of potential. For many years, the arrival of Bitcoin, the cryptocurrency predicted to hit a value of $1.2 trillion by the end of 2018, promised something much more than quicker online payments. Free from government or central bank control, transparent and regulated by a network of users, early adopters championed Bitcoin's utopian credentials. I wouldn't exactly call it utopian. It was more libertarian than utopian, but okay. It was breathlessly pitched as a currency for the people, out of reach of the manipulative forces of a centralized power hub. This appeal was enhanced by the timing of its inception, which coincided with the fallout from the financial crash of 2008, heralding a time of skepticism of banks and the wider establishment. Well, that crash kind of created the environment for blockchain and Bitcoin to happen. And the reason for that is not consumer confidence, but along those lines. It was at an all-time low, and people don't trust the banks. When they're watching them get bailed out after they wiped out shit tons of wealth of like average people, pocketed it, and are sitting high off the hog. I mean, without that, odds are there wouldn't have been the initiative for the development of it. Uh, 10 years on, although Bitcoin has managed to shed its formerly seedy reputation, the currency is not much closer to entertaining mainstream usage. Oh, surprisingly, it's becoming pretty mainstream. For most, the currency doesn't offer many immediate tangible benefits over sticking with pounds or dollars. In fact, movement of large swatches of the currency has stagnated due to investors hoarding Bitcoins with the intention of selling them at a profit. This behavior has shifted Bitcoin's primary use away from everyday transactions and instead towards speculation. Well, any commodity is going to lead to that. What you're failing to look at is this actually happens with physical currency, with hard currency. There are currency speculators out there that will buy in one currency, trade it to another, and then trade that for another, so that because of the fluctuations between one currency and another, they can make money off of that. So, I mean, this is not anything new here. But while interest in Bitcoin as a currency has plateaued, curiosity about its underlying technology has intensified. The distributed ledger technology the currency relies on has attracted interest from a number of industries. Banks, the very organizations Bitcoin users intended to bypass, have shown great interest in harnessing the technology to streamline online payments. I gotta say, what is it with all these fucking dashes instead of commas? I mean, proper English, put a comma there. You don't need to put a dash. I find that like fucking annoying. I really do. Anyway, the thing here is see, banks see the merit in it, and not necessarily for the fact of say how people are looking at it with the currency aspect. It can aid them in dealing with, say, like it says, you know, harnessing the technology to streamline online payments, for example. I mean, not only that, but also, say, exchanges between banks. Things like that. I mean, that can definitely help them. So they're not necessarily looking at the currency aspect of it, but they are looking at using it in the exchange of currency. Blockchain technology offers a way to cut out the middleman in financial transactions. Instead of being processed by one third party, the transactions pass through and are recorded by numerous computers on a dispersed network. Hence the flock of platforms built by tech giants such as IBM and Microsoft offering blockchain as a service to businesses with an interest in secure payments and increasing transparency in supply chains. Now, when you see companies like them getting involved, it's both a good thing and a bad thing. It goes to show that there is credence and credibility to blockchain and Bitcoin, but it also shows that they see a way of taking advantage of it and exploiting it for their for their benefit and profitability. So I mean, you got to take that, whole good with the bad thing with that. Banks' uptake on blockchain seems to signal the demise of the tech's hopes of challenging the prevailing economic order. Not necessarily true, because they're not looking at it as a means of currency, or as a to exchange currency between one person and another, or like directly, or as a currency itself. They're looking at it as a technology that they can incorporate into, more for like their end, not for the consumer end. They don't want consumers to have something like this because it takes them out of the picture. They want to control it. But despite corporate interest in blockchain, could its most radical application be yet to come? Today there are growing numbers of decentralized social media networks cropping up, with the hopes of one day challenging the supremacy of Facebook. They're directly opposed to centralized private platforms like Instagram or Snapchat that have to keep shareholders happy rather than simply their users. Why did I say simplify? See, that's the thing. Even with the blockchain factor, power corrupts. Money corrupts, greed, So that this is not a guarantee. It'll make things harder for that to happen, but it still could happen. In its purest form, such a network would lack a central body creating profit from the platform and therefore be unrestrained by the goal of appeasing advertisers. Like Bitcoin, it could be modeled on a system where those who invest most time and effort in the network have the greatest influence on its evolution. Now, I have no problems with that. I actually agree that those who put more time, effort, and energy in on a platform should get more back. Although that could lead to people spending their whole lives, if they're getting paid, on a social network. Scenario aims to provide such a platform and has developed its own blockchain technology, which the network is built upon. Aside from creating a decentralized social platform, the developers aim to drastically alter the traditional relationship between advertisers and the public. They claim that all the money paid by advertisers will be distributed among those who are exposed to the ads. This would directly monetize attention by paying individuals rather than the host network, thus recognizing the value of social networks is created by its users. But see, that's one thing. It's already recognized. They're just not getting paid. And that's why all these companies want to spend money with Facebook. This is why all these companies want to spend money with Twitter. It's because they recognize it. I mean, if we're talking recognized on the fact of they get, a nod and something kicked back to them, I mean, that's a different story. But it is recognized. If this seems radical, it's because it is. In the current ecosystem, the users of the system aren't remunerated, even though they are the ones that bring value to the platform. Without its 2.2 billion users, Facebook wouldn't be worth 479.4 billion. The 479.4 billion it is today. Wow, I apologize for that flub up. But do the users see any of that? No. In fact, we pay for the privilege, though, through a steady stream of data. Yeah, we do, but I mean, the thing is, okay, Facebook, a lot of those 2.2 billion users are bots. The same with Twitter, the same with these other platforms. So to accurately claim, how many users there are, you'd have to wipe out all of them. And I mean, that would drop the value of these platforms anyway. If the actual numbers of users, and active ones at that, was public, I'm sure their values would go down quite a bit. And an effect that is even more pronounced for platforms expressly designed for users to upload original content. Oh, is an effect that is even more pronounced. I apologize. Take YouTube, for example. Although it's original content creators that bring in the hordes of viewers, I'm sorry, I gotta stop for a second, because the whole thing is this is an understatement for YouTube. Okay, because they're the ones that bring in all of their viewers. You know, so although it's the original content creators that bring in the hordes of viewers, which you say bring in all of the viewers, they have to fight hard to get a fraction of the sum that YouTube pays itself through ad revenue. In fact, a 2018 study found that 96.5% of all YouTubers don't make enough from their videos to pass the poverty line. Ouch. Apply this to an industry where it's a physical rather than digital service provided, and the injustice becomes even more glaring. It is as if each Uber trip I'm sorry. The Uber comparison made me laugh before, and I'm thinking about it now because it is true. It's as if each Uber trip, the platform snapped up 90% of our payment instead of the 25% it claims, leaving the driver with a mere 5% for services rendered. Pretty much. I don't understand how that flies. I mean, that's kind of bullshit. Blockchain-powered platforms, by removing the need for a middleman and facilitating direct peer-to-peer payments, could end up making these platforms obsolete altogether. Oh, yeah. And I'm sure Facebook, Alphabet, with YouTube, Twitter, all these companies are freaking out about the fact that it could be an end to them just by this alone. Running with this idea, Steemit is another blockchain-powered social network taking inspiration from community messaging site Reddit. And my content goes up on Steemit with uploading it to DTube. And it does kind of have a Reddit feel to it. And I actually like it. It's still a work in progress, the same with DTube. But it's definitely a good step in one direction towards, decentralization. It is based on a decentralized network called Steem. Its internal currency is paid to posters for their contribution by other users. Upvotes, instead of just carrying social prestige within the system, also contribute a fraction of the currency to the poster. The more Steem currency you've accumulated, the more your upvote counts. You can spend the currency at PeerHub, store affiliated with the site, or cash out and exchange your tokens for Bitcoin or other currencies on cryptocurrency exchanges, which is a good thing. I mean, I've earned a little money there. I don't have a big presence there at this point, but I mean, between DTube and Steemit, I've earned a little money. I mean, my account's worth a couple bucks. Not much. Literally like 2 something. But that's the value of it total. I mean, the amount of Steem I have isn't much. Because like I said, I don't have much of a presence there at this point. But I mean, I see the potential in it. There's so far been $22,728,958 paid out to users, according to the website. This system could counter complaints of lack of remuneration on sites such as YouTube, and for the creators such as illustrators, meme creators, or artists on Instagram. The clarity of the supply chain afforded by blockchain systems could also help with the problem of content appropriation and reposting without paying due credit, which is true. That's another factor to it. It helps protect people's intellectual property. Currently, transaction fees for online payments render micropayments inefficient, but in these new ecosystems, micropayments facilitated by cryptocurrencies could replace the revenue produced by ads and more directly benefit the producers themselves. Yeah, because it goes directly to them. For example, on a video hosting site, instead of being forced to view ads, from which the majority of revenue benefits the host of the site rather than the creator, You could pay a few pence to watch it, or more if you so choose. The internet's lack of a successful model for monetizing content means that media requiring high levels of production is chronically undervalued. Definitely very true. A prime example is the funding crisis faced by news outlets, who are yet to discover a sustainable commercial model for the digital age. Yes, but those are legacy media outlets, because if you look at alternative media, they've found ways of funding themselves. I mean, they get by. I mean, most of them are one-people operations, and they rely on, contributions from their viewers, which to me, isn't like a handout, because you're offering a service if they're willing to pay for it. I mean, what's more libertarian than that? But I mean, then you get, like, with that, you get Patreon taking a cut and, other sites. And so, I mean, this would be definitely a benefit for them, on the note of the independents, because they wouldn't have those companies taking a percentage. Which, I mean, they have to be there to process. I understand that, and they need to make their money. But at least this way you could more directly put your money towards a creator. I always knew that an open source social network was inevitably going to emerge and become competitive with the top establishment social network, says Bill Ottman, founder of Minds, a site that I'm on actually. Another decentralized social platform. It's not decentralized yet. They're still trying to work out the blockchain factor of it, but they're getting there. It also became clear that the mainstream social networks were not rewarding people, were not incentivizing people. They weren't giving revenue opportunities. They're restricting people's reach. They're spying on people. So it became sort of obvious that there's a market requirement for the space that we've filled. Now, here's the thing. I mean, they have incentivized people, but not, say, in a positive way. They make their platforms more addictive. Okay, so you're getting the pleasure response as your reward, okay? They've turned us into Pavlovian dogs to an extent. If we're going back and we're looking for that fix, I mean, that's literally what we've become, and that's the type of reward they're doing. It's not a positive one. However, it's not just zealous newcomers attempting to disrupt social media. More established social networks are also beginning to dabble in blockchain. One example is Kik, the anonymous messaging app. It recently launched its own within-app cryptocurrency, Kin, which raised $100 million in initial ICO. Kin was launched to provide a way to incentivize developers to add digital services and applications to the network without involving a middleman to facilitate payments. Its final goal is to create an in-app marketplace where peer-to-peer transactions can take place and advertisers can directly speak to users and receive remuneration, e.g. for coupons, through the messaging service. I mean, that's not a bad idea. I'll give them credit for that. I mean, but the thing is they try to say that, cryptocurrency isn't quite mainstream yet, but you have all these companies doing ICOs. And that should speak contrary to that fact. I mean, if companies are willing to put, their initial, gaining capital, getting their capital, if they're willing to risk it by putting it into cryptocurrency, it has to be mainstream enough for them to be willing to make such a risk happen. Because if it's too risky, they're not going to do it. But while decentralization may seem radical, it is not actually anything new. In fact, when the web first launched in the 90s, it was very much unregulated, decentralized ecosystem. In those days, internet users published their own content directly to the web without the need for the middlemen such as Facebook. Since then, companies have built their own high-walled private gardens, trapping us inside so better to feed us ads and harvest our personal information. I don't exactly agree with that description, because people choose to go to these sites. It's not like they're forced to go there. They can still go get hosting and publish their own pages. I mean, that's still a thing. Companies are guzzling our data like never before and using it in ways most of us still don't fully comprehend. We let them rummage through and sell off what they find in any number of unscrupulous to any number of unscrupulous third parties. Well, if you're stupid enough not to read the terms of service, not to use the user end agreement, not to read it, that's your own fucking fault. I mean, that's like, South Park guys, I Human Centipede, or whatever the hell that episode was, where Kyle gets his mouth sewn to another person's ass, and his ass sewn to another person's mouth. That's your own fault if you're not making sure that you know what you're getting yourself into. But despite the increasing distaste towards social media giants and their collection and misuse of our data, can people be persuaded to try something different? One roadblock is that, although people may like the sound of the ideology behind these new, non-platformy platforms, this may not be enough to convince them to leave their walled gardens, because the main draw behind a social network is arguably who is there already, namely friends and family. Which, the funny thing is that hasn't really hurt minds. I've seen growth there since I've been there. I mean, I've been there a while. The same with Gab. So, if there's an outside factor, or, even one that's directly involved, like say with Facebook and their censorship, Twitter and their censorship, you drive people to other platforms and increases their growth. And then other people start to follow them. Because how do you think Facebook and Twitter and all these other platforms out there got some of their, a bunch, more than some. I don't want to say a lot, but a good amount of their user base through word of mouth and other people telling their family and friends, hey, come check out this site. I'm out here. We can chat out there, whatever. And that's how these sites came to be. So, don't rule them out on that note. Although this imperative varies for different sites, for example, on content sharing or community board sites, e.g. Tumblr or Reddit, personally knowing people is less of an issue. Explaining why these sites could be the first iterations of decentralized social networks to gain the most traction. Well, I think one reason why these first iterations, like, the Tumblr, Reddit type, why they could be the first iterations of decentralized social networks is more because of the fact of how you go about, like, with Reddit is kind of like the idea of, like, old school forums. And with those type of site structures, people are there looking for a specific thing. It's not necessarily social. It's, yeah, there's a social aspect, but it's more looking for information, assistance with something, a point of view, things like that. It's not like, say Facebook or Twitter where you're posting pictures and shit like that. So, I think that kind of has a factor to it as well. But for most people, transitioning away from the sites that they already use may require more incentivization. Kind of like how the idea of cryptocurrencies distinct from a centralized power like a bank is very appealing thought. Well, it's more than that. Because, to say kind of like how the idea of cryptocurrency distinct from a centralized power like a bank is very appealing thought. That's kind of like, that's not a proper sentence. Well, it is, but see, the thing is, though, it's more to it with the appealing nature of cryptocurrency than the fact of banks. It's governments, okay? It's anyone and everyone. It's the fact of keeping your financial transactions between you and the other person, period, regardless of government, banking, whatever. and other individuals, it doesn't matter. So, I mean, that's more what it's about. But not enough for me to shut my bank account and pull my money into Bitcoin. Well, that's true too. I mean, again, because you get that speculative situation going on. See, I mean, here we are at a point where when it comes to money, when it comes to the exchange of it, there's a lot going on globally. And with what is going on, China going after the petrodollar with a gold-backed exchange note, things like that. Consumer confidence in hard currency is probably, depending how things go, going to get even lower. And as it does, that's going to lead to an increase when it comes to, say, cryptocurrencies. Like it does with gold, for example. Cryptocurrency is, for lack of a better idea, is like the idea of dealing in digital gold. So, it's all relative. Given this, it is unlikely that these early sites will tempt people over with big enough numbers to cause Facebook concern. But as blockchain and the ideology it embodies is absorbed into a growing number of industries, decentralized social networks could one day become the status quo, leaving us to wonder why we spend so much time within these walls. Well, see, the thing is, I can tell you why. It's called... They give you your fix, you fucking addict. So, I mean, that's why they make these sites so addictive. Because they got to keep you there. Because they mine... It's like the idea of, like, mining for cryptocurrency, except they're mining you for money. And it's not, like, not actual, like, hashing, but they're trying to make their money. So they're mining for it to an extent by bringing in users. Okay, the more the user spends time-wise there, the more money they make. So they want to keep you there as long as they can, as much as they can, so that they can make as much money as possible off of you. I mean, that's how it works. So, I mean, but anyway, I think I've covered this well enough, so I'm just going to leave things here. If you liked this video, depending on where you are watching it, please give it an upvote or thumbs up. If you want to know when new content of mine hits the internet, don't forget to subscribe to one or more of my social media or video accounts listed here. Also, with YouTube, don't forget to ring that bell. You can find all of my video content on both BitChute and YouTube. This may not be the case with other places I upload to, but I will try to minimize this happening. You are always welcome to interact with me at any of these sites on the list, so feel free to do so. If you have anything you want me to cover in a video, when it comes to news or current events, send it right along to me. I will try to do my best to cover it. As always, thank you for watching.